Yeah, my name's Mr. Newman. I'm a social studies teacher here at Brighton High School. Been here for 21 years. I teach U.S. history and AP government. My interest in the military really kind of started taking off right around 2001 after the attacks on 9/11. My wife had a relative who was a firefighter in New York, went down in the World Trade Center. I had kicked around a little interest in it at that time. My wife was pregnant with our first child, and she's like, "You're not doing anything like that," so we kind of put it off on the back burner. But by 2008, I'd had probably 3 or 4 former students who had both, who had all gone in the military. They had served in combat over in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I just really felt compelled that our country is at war, and instead of sending the same guys back over and over and over again, I really felt like it's kind of our civic responsibility to step up. We preach it in school. We talk about your civic duty and your civic responsibility, but that's just talk if you don't back it up. And I really felt motivated to do my part. So I enlisted in 2008. I ended up serving 8 years total. I was in the Army Reserves, and so I actually did my basic training in the summer of 2008, basically over summer vacation, came back and taught school in the fall, and then did my advanced training the following summer. I was deployed 2010 to 2011 as part of what was known at the time as the Surge. I was part of about 160,000 additional forces that were sent into Afghanistan. I spent the bulk of my time down in southern Afghanistan, in Kandahar province, and also did a little work in Helmand province, so right down near Pakistan. And kind of our area of operation was kind of the birthplace, the home to the Taliban. My job when I'm stateside, I was part of military justice. I basically worked with a lot of the JAG attorneys. We did investigations into soldiers who did wrongdoing or were accused of wrongdoing, and then administer military justice if necessary. When I was deployed, my role completely changed. When I was in Afghanistan, we were dealing with what's called foreign claims. So our job was to go out where locals made complaints that our military forces had gone in and damaged property or damaged their homes during our military operations. And if it was deemed credible and through our investigation we discovered that it wasn't because of American forces at fault, then we would have to make reparations. We would have to make payment so that the family would not join the Taliban and start attacking American forces. About half the time those missions were for legitimate purposes, where it was a village or a family member that had a grievance against military forces, whether they were U.S. or other NATO forces. But the other half of the time it was really more of a setup. They basically were trying to draw us out so that they could launch their little surprise attacks and ambush us. It's had a very large impact. Other ways, it just tweaked my feelings a little bit. I've always been supportive of the military. I had family members way back World War II time period that served. So I always respected the military, but having served in it now, I have a much more profound, kind of a deep-rooted respect for everybody that serves in the military. It is a huge sacrifice on the part of everyone that's involved. Coming back to civilian life, the first year and a half really just seemed kind of normal. I was excited to be home. I was excited to be alive. We watched guys not come back. But after about a year and a half, there were some things I had to work through. I had some issues with PTS, just readjusting to civilian life, getting used to some of the conditions where over in Afghanistan they were a very high-risk, high-stress situation, and there were settings here as a civilian that really made some of that a little difficult to get through and deal with. That's part of the reason I have my service dog Arthur with me is to help me deal with some of that stuff. But all in all, it's been a life experience I'm proud to say I was involved in. It's something I don't regret. But it does give you a lot deeper respect for what people go through and what they do when they serve their country. For me as a veteran, it's important that we have days like this where we remember our service members. And one of the key things I always remind my students when we're talking about Veterans Day is that veterans are not just combat soldiers. They're not just your combat infantrymen who are over there, right in the thick of the fight. Veterans are every person who has served in the military, whether it's the Coast Guard, Marines, Navy, Air Force, Army. Every person who has volunteered and stepped forward to serve their country is a veteran. And people may not realize a lot of times we take for granted, but the fact our military is entirely volunteer. And we make up less than 1% of our nation's population. So to me, veterans are that 1% who chose to basically put their name on a dotted line knowing it could ultimately cost them their life. And so having a day to really pay respect, regardless of whether those veterans were working on a military base here stateside their entire career, they still were doing a job that allowed the warfighter to go and do their job over in combat. And so really, it's a time where we reflect and think about and respect all people from all branches who serve in the military.